talking about politics?
Well, yes, certainly it has something to do with Australian politics, and it has something to do with Aussie people and the overall mindset of current Aussie of nowadays Aussie people. Certainly, yes. What do you think?
Um, we have an umbrella and them in a lot of Western nations, but I do think it's a larger problem in Australia than most similar countries.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a system of government that promotes parties, even though that seems to be unconstitutional itself.
Mm-hmm.
And we've also got a system of government that promotes a duopoly, so two leading parties. So it's usually one or the other. You don't get other parties or independents gaining power, especially at the federal level. So that, of course, is corrupt. It's open for gaming. Now, on top of that, those two parties are near identical.
You mean
They
the
are
Liberal parties and the Labour
on the
Party?
vast majority of issues, they are exactly the same. There's not a lot of difference between the two. There's a few ideological differences behind them, but on most issues, they're exactly the same. So it doesn't matter which way you vote, which means the entire election system is a farce. It really doesn't matter whether you vote, don't vote, in determining who's in power. The vote is really important to signal the will of the people. So if the government sees, especially with the smaller parties or the independents, those groups getting a lot of votes, they'll theoretically look at their policies and go, okay, this is what people want. If we don't start doing at least some of this, someone's going to swing the other way and we're going to lose the election. So of voting in Australia, while we say we're a democratic country, it is a representational democracy.
So you mean it is pseudo-democracy? Pseudo-democracy.
It is, because democracy is supposed to do is give the power to the people instead of an aristocracy. But what a representational democracy does is you've still got the aristocracy, which is getting voted in. It's still a group of people, and if you don't fit the mold, you won't be pre-selected into those groups. So we're still voting for them, and even if we elect someone to represent our voice in Parliament, if they don't get the majority of votes, they don't get a voice in Parliament. So we are combining the worst elements of mob rule, which unfortunately is inherent in democracy, and we are taking away the voice or the vote of the person and assigning that to an elite, basically. So we don't have a direct democracy in Australia or anything close. Now, the election process in Australia is a bit better than what they have in the US.
As
But
I have seen.
We've got the situation where.
As I have
What's that,
seen,
sorry?
Yeah, Australia has a somewhat higher ranking and a somewhat higher index of democracy than America does.
Yes.
According to
I think.
according
While I'm not sure I'm a fan of compulsory voting, mandatory voting, I do think it has helped Australia a bit. I don't think our voters are informed enough, and I do blame our media for that. and our education system. I honestly think the system can only improve through media reform and educational reform. Unless we do that, it is going to devolve. Politics in this country are going the wrong direction. We're starting to be influenced strongly by politics in other countries. And I think this is only going to increase over the next decade.
But what do you think those
American media, especially Hollywood, has really conditioned us to be pro-democracy. We haven't really looked at other systems. There are some good systems out there. Or even with keeping in democracy, I think direct democracy or democracy by proxy are two superior systems that we have the technology for today, and we do have the security mechanisms in place to prevent fraud. There is absolutely no reason for not switching to that other than to protect the establishment.
Agreed. But I have a question, if you don't mind to ask.
So if there's resistance for adopting technology to do that, it's for a reason. It means that the system is corrupt and not working.
So I have a question, if you don't mind. I mean,
yes.
What do you think? Those participating politicians get, are getting out of from the voting. Do you think they somehow profit from getting the votes or encouraging people to vote for them? Do you think they somehow profit from these activities or voting?
Oh, they do. So what happens is with the election, when you get a certain number of votes, you start getting public funding. So you get money from the taxpayer for each vote that you get, basically. If there was no election system, it'd be hard for these parties to justify taking money from the taxpayer. I do think that the election is a bit of theatre.
For people to see, right? Not for
the process. Really,
not it doesn't have many practical uses.
It pits people against each other instead of trying to unify people and to achieve some goal. The election process is a bit broken too. But that's all Western democracies. They suffer from the same issue. I don't have an answer for that, but it's something that does need to be looked at.
Yeah, nice.
I think we blindly just say that democracy is the best system. We can't look at any other system. Every other system is third world. And yeah, I think we're really close-minded.
So even if those politicians, they don't get elected, they still they can still somehow profit from these campaigns, this lobbying, and this voting.
Running for office can be very profitable.
This kind of, they can still profit from these events, various events they hold.
Yes.
And they try to indoctrinate people into fighting one another with various ideologies and mindsets whatsoever. So it's pretty...
over the last 2 election cycles, we've seen a rise of Nazism in Australia. And that is basically purely due to the profitability. if you can be really, really out there and different and on a limb and engage people that are disenfranchised with the system,
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make a couple of $1 million.
$1 million. Oh,
Yep.
Jesus. Oh, excuse me. So, do you think the Aussie government is somehow manipulating public opinions by voting, by election campaigns, by mass media?
The Australian government doesn't have a lot of control over our media.
Mm-hmm.
We do have quite an independent media, so even our national broadcaster is very independent. Yep, which is unusual for a national broadcaster. But I've looked at national broadcasters in a lot of countries, and the situation in Australia is far most. It's even better than the BBC situation in the UK. We have a lot of we have a lot of staffers in Canberra who are very, very intelligent people. We don't have a lot of politicians, especially at the federal level, that have the intellectual nous to actually manipulate. They just don't have it. So I wouldn't say it's the government manipulating people. I do say it is big media.
It's the media who are manipulating the people.
We do have the vast... Yes, so the vast majority of media in Australia, especially in regional areas, is all controlled by one company. This person also has a huge media presence in the US and UK and affects elections there in a similar fashion. I do think that media is the single biggest issue. And there are a number of large lobby groups that use their money to manipulate politicians, but also use their membership to manipulate the media. I think media is the single biggest issue, and I thought that new media, such as blogging and social media, etc., would address that issue, but it's actually made the situation worse. For media to be able to inform a population, the population has to be educated and be able to spot lies. We do not have that in Australia. So there are segments of the community that can read a story and call BS straight away, but we do have a large section of the population who will just believe everything that they read.
So you are
not as bad as the US, but getting close.
So you think many news writers, content writers, and commentators, they write like a barbarian. They make their comments like a barbarian, and they try to manipulate the public like a barbarian. They are not using more subtle,
very much so. Okay,
subtle ways to.
What has happened, especially in the last 10 years, journalism in Australia is not profitable. Being a journalist and trying to get a full-time job is near impossible. Keeping your job is near impossible. Getting a decent wage is near impossible. So being someone who goes out, either investigates for facts or goes and conducts interviews or just does a report on something that is happening, come back to the office, write an article which is fairly balanced, publish it, that is not profitable. You cannot support, you have to take lower wages if you want to do that kind of thing. And what's happened is that the vast majority of people, especially the high profile people in the media, are working for other organizations to make their salary. They can go work for a lobby group or a think tank and earn six-figure salaries because they've got big corporate money behind them. So a lot of journalists are earning $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. And a lot recently have even taken a pay cut on top of that. And to make their money, they're going and basically writing blogs for think tanks. And those think tanks have an agenda, and they're doing this work. And in order to keep their job at the think tank, they have to write this blog entry or article for the think tank, but they also have to get it published in the outlet that they're working for. These all the beliefs and the entire agenda of these couple of powerful think tanks are ending up as front page and primary stories in our mass media. So basically the national conversation reported through the media is really at the whim of a number of lobby groups. But at the same time, those lobby groups are either sponsored by or have a close relationship to the owners of these media outlets. So they've sort of created their own, and they do have power over our government. They do have power over the population. It is something that's going to be very, very, very hard to escape. And I do think that the only way to escape it is new media and online news. I think entities like Facebook have really screwed that up.
Why do you think they have screwed it up? I mean, Facebook. Why do you think it has screwed it up?
The American style of the free speech debate has got a lot of people lost. I'm a proponent of free speech. I do believe that anyone should be able to say anything that they want. I do believe that we should try to make a platform available for every kind of opinion, but not every platform available for that. So I don't think every idea should be given a platform. And if an idea has been debunked as false, I don't think it should be given a platform ever again. My main thing is I believe that credentials with news is important. So if you classify yourself as a news organization, I don't think you should be able to report falsities. I think everything you report should be accurate. I don't have a problem with having a spin on the article, like giving a one-sided opinion.
We should remain as neutral.
I don't believe that's the best practice, but I'm not against it as long as the alternative opinion is also made available on a similar platform. You feature two writers on your platform that have a different opinion. So I don't have a problem with that. I think with the way Facebook has tried to balance free speech and fake news and all of this, they've gone about it the wrong way. They've gone about it from the American perspective, and I do think it's really screwed things up. We can no longer differentiate between entertainment and news. So, for example, in the US, if you're a news organization, you have to register as a news organization. You get a press pass. But that means that if you report something that's false, you're going to get a massive fine. And if you do it continuously, you're going to lose your press license. But when it comes to especially articles on Facebook, there is no differentiation between what is a news outlet and what is an entertainment outlet. Now, on top of that, to make matters worse, is that the traditional news outlets in America, integrity over the last 10 or 15 years, they started really working for the establishment. They would really spin everything in the government's favor. And so people became disenfranchised, and they're looking for information from other sources. Unfortunately, those sources were not pro the current establishment. They are pro-establishment, but not the pro-current establishment. So they did rally against the government, but what they were reporting was not based in any reality whatsoever. But a lot of people are bought into it, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
So we've just got a complete propaganda machine that a lot of people are bought into, and only because it feels more right than what the establishment was dishing out before. I think traditional media does have a role. I think it's going to be traditional media that's going to bring us back onto the right track. And then new media has to be approached in a much different way than Facebook approached it. I do think Facebook has killed people's ability to get accurate information.
Yeah, I have to admit that Facebook has, incrementally lost its, its advocacy for, freedom of speech. Several months ago, I tried, I just posted, I just posted something on Facebook, to express my anger. I just said I just used many profanities and such as the F word, fuck, and then the post got removed and my account got suspended for, not exactly suspended, but banned from posting for around 3 days. Yeah, and they just said my post has somehow violated Facebook's community's guidelines. And perhaps I can show you the screenshot of my post someday. You can have a look. See, it really violates the community guidelines of Facebook.
Sure.
Yeah, it's I didn't actually mean to slander or insult anyone. I merely expressed my anger and frustration, of people, of the world in general, not specifically, trying to insult or slander anyone in particular. Yeah, but Facebook.
Facebook is normally quite generous with language.
Really?
When you get removed easily, and lots of people do make this mistake, and it's often just semantics in the way that it's written. You on Facebook, you generally get complete power to attack an idea, but once you attack a person or a group of people, they shut you down quite quickly. So wording is really, really important if you're using strong language.
But
I use strong language a lot, but I'm always very, very careful about what I'm attacking.
When you mention strong languages, do you tend to include lots of profanities, profane words like fuck, shit, crap?
Yes.
You do?
Yes, and Facebook doesn't have they seem to be okay with it as long as the audience won't be kids. And especially if you're commenting on a page and you're an adversary to that page, then you can use the words, but you should censor them. So just use a couple of letters of the word. But if you're expressing an opinion which isn't against the page, then you can use the words uninhibited, and I do often. On your own timeline, you can get away with almost anything. Just remember that Facebook, when you've got pages and groups, they're other people's pages and other people's groups. So you sort of need to respect them a bit, and if you don't, you'll get kicked.
Oh, I got kicked. It sounds
a lot of people forget that. So they're on Facebook and they go into other people's area.
Yeah, so it sounds to me as if I almost got myself kicked out from Facebook by using lots of profanities. There's also one time that I post something uh, quite offensive and profane. I once posted something like I nearly turned I nearly turned into gay due to uh, prolonged period of malnutrition. And someone said this to me. It's the most offensive post I ever seen in my life from you. Why you why you mention why do you try to relate sexual orientation to nutrition status to to things like that, and and he felt offended by my post. And I also tried to post something like yeah something like fact dies, God laughs, and I didn't have the post removed by Facebook. Why? So why do you think Facebook did not remove posts like this? But yet they removed my post.
Okay.
With lots of profanities like fuck, shit, crap. I hate this freaking fucking world, and it got removed. Yeah.
Look, offense can be measured in different ways, and context is really, really important. So, for example, if you go onto a page which is owned by a butcher and you comment on something that they've said and you say fuck vegans, you're fine. You're not going to get banned. You're not going to get kicked off. If you go onto a vegan website, a vegan page, you post the same thing, you will be banned. Now, either way, 100%, a vegan has seen the post and they've reported it. But it's about where you are and respecting the people around you. And while those pages are both hosted on Facebook, they've got a very, very different audience, and your post will be seen as a different way. So the butcher's website, you're going to be reacting to something that a vegan has possibly done to the butcher. So that's acceptable. But if you go into the vegans world and you start slinging swear words around, that is harassment. And that is why you'll get banned.
Harassment. It's difficult.
Both cases, they're borderline offensive, but Facebook really, they try not to ban for offense because it's so subjective. They only do it when they've got no other option. So that's basically the difference. You really need to pick your audience with what you're saying.
So you reckon most likely someone in particular urged Facebook to remove some of my posts. If that particular someone did not urge Facebook to do that, it won't happen, right?
Facebook doesn't want to post, so you have to be reported by another user for your post to be removed.
Report.
Yep.
I hate moles. I hate rats. I hate those persons. I hate those people. Why do they keep?
So if you're posting things on your own timeline, it's very, very rare to have those posts removed. They have to be generally extremely offensive or illegal in where in America or where you are.
Yeah, that's pretty shit. So there are lots of ways to disincentivize people from doing certain things, such as what Facebook usually does is to constantly filtering and removing things they dislike, or their users tend to dislike.
It's okay. See, they do have their what do they call